I didn't even mean to swipe that night. I was lying in bed, half wrapped in my blanket burrito, trying to wind down after a long day of grad school hell. My thumb was moving on autopilot, mind blank, just skimming through Tinder profiles without really seeing them. I'd sworn off dating apps after a string of forgettable hookups, and one guy who cried over his ex while we split a plate of pad thai. But loneliness is a sneaky little bastard. And boredom? Even worse. I stumbled across him. His name was Luca. Dark curls, sharp jawline, and this posture that screamed money and therapy. One of his photos showed him lounging on a velvet couch in a navy suit. The caption said, "I help people fall in love. Sometimes with each other. Sometimes with themselves." I rolled my eyes at first, but then I paused. That line, it stuck. Not in a corny rom-com way, but in a wait, did he actually write that sort of way? His profile said he was 28, a relationship strategist, and the author of a book called Unlearning Love. I had that book. Found it in a used bookstore last fall, buried under a stack of outdated political biographies. I stayed up all night reading it in one sitting, highlighting passages like a freshman psych major on Adderall. I didn't remember the author's picture, but the name? Luca Warren. Yep, same guy. I swiped right. Instant match. His first message wasn't "hey" or "what's up." It was, "If you could rewrite one moment in your relationship history, what would it be?" I stared at that message for a good 2 minutes. Then I typed back, probably the time I said yes when I knew I should have said no. He replied instantly. Most of us are trained to say yes, especially when we're afraid to be alone. I remember actually sitting up in bed. My heart was racing, but not from excitement. From recognition. That kind of unnerving familiarity you feel when someone cuts right through your noise and hits the nerve. We talked for hours that night. About attachment styles, childhood wounds, why people confuse chemistry with compatibility. He told me that most relationships fail not because of miscommunication, but because people fall in love with potential instead of reality. The next night, we FaceTimed. Then again. And again. I started looking forward to his calls. He had this calm voice, low and patient, like someone who'd never rush a sentence. He asked me questions no one ever had, about my parents, my first heartbreak, why I always felt the need to fix broken people. He remembered every answer, even the ones I gave without saying out loud. By the end of the week, we were talking every night. 10 days in, he asked if I wanted to meet in person. We met at a minimalist cafe downtown. Exposed brick, big leafy plants, oat milk everything. He was already there when I arrived, scribbling in a leather-bound notebook. He stood when he saw me, said my name in this soft, grounded tone, and hugged me like we were picking up where we left off. And just like that, I was under. He was magnetic. Not just hot. Though yeah, he absolutely was, but present. Attentive in a way that felt dangerous. Like he saw too much and didn't flinch. We talked for 3 hours about relationships, trauma, generational habits, and the ways we sabotage ourselves for love. He told me he used to work in corporate marketing before he burned out and cracked open. He said coaching gave him purpose, that he'd spent years studying people, patterns, and pain. He told me I had a rare emotional vocabulary, that most women he dated were either guarded or codependent, but I was different. I knew myself. I wasn't afraid to look inward. I didn't even finish my coffee. I was too busy drinking in his attention. After that, we started seeing each other regularly. We weren't official, but it felt exclusive. He cooked for me, made me playlists, bought me a weighted blanket after I told him I had insomnia. And the sex? God. It was like he knew how to touch every part of me, physically, emotionally, spiritually. He didn't just fuck, he studied me. Things started feeling a little off around week 3. I noticed he was posting more on Instagram. Stories where he'd talk about clients or case studies. At first, I was proud. Like, look at my man dropping wisdom. Until one night, I saw a story captioned, "Client A struggles with saying no." Classic fawn response. "We're working on it." The quote sounded uncomfortably close to something I'd told him. Word for word. I tried to shake it off. He was a coach. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Then came another one. She intellectualizes everything. It's her way of avoiding vulnerability. Again, painfully familiar. I clicked through more stories. One mentioned a woman with a high-control upbringing and a history of emotional neglect. Another described someone who dissociates during intimacy but performs well socially. I felt nauseous. Then he sent me a link to his podcast. "Thought you'd like this one," he said. I put on my headphones. His voice poured into my ears. I've been working with someone recently. She's incredibly bright. Sociologist. Very self-aware. But she has a pattern of intellectualizing her emotions. It's a defense against being truly seen. My stomach dropped. She's been through betrayal. Her last partner cheated. She never confronted him. She just stayed. That's what happens when we confuse loyalty with love. I ripped my earbuds out. My hands were shaking. I confronted him the next night. Is that podcast episode about me? He didn't even try to deny it. Of course it is, he said calmly. You're part of my work. I never agreed to be used like that. You're not being used. You're helping people. I'm sharing insights. No names. No identifiers. You're monetizing my trauma. He looked genuinely surprised. Ava, I'm not exploiting you. I'm honoring you. You're the reason I can teach the way I do. You're dating people to study them. He didn't flinch. I date people because I want to connect. But yes, I learn from those connections. That's part of being a coach. I left. Walked straight out of his apartment with my chest tight and my hands balled into fists. I blocked him on everything that night. But it didn't stop there. I kept seeing his content. TikToks where he'd say things like, "Some people are so addicted to being the strong one they forget how to feel safe." Tweets that mirrored things I'd told him in bed. Quotes that were basically my therapy sessions with a filter. I tried to let it go. Until one night at my cousin Jade's birthday party, she leaned in and said, "Guess who I'm talking to?" I smiled tipsy. "Who?" "Luca. That relationship guy. He's so smart, Ava. Like therapy-level smart." I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. "Jade. That guy? He's not who you think he is." Her face shifted. "Oh my God, wait. Is this the guy you dated?" "Yes. And he used me. He studies women. He turns people into content." Jade blinked. "Ava, come on. Just because it didn't work out. I'm serious. He's dangerous." She rolled her eyes. "You sound jealous." She left before I could convince her. I stood there, drink sweating in my hand, watching her disappear into the crowd. 3 weeks later, I got a DM from an anonymous account. "You don't know me, but I saw your name in one of his notes. You're not the only one." Attached was a screenshot, a spreadsheet, rows of names, ages, attachment styles, sexual preferences, trigger points, quotes, outcome notes. Ava, row 7. Jade, row 12. Some entries were marked case study alpha. Others said used in workshop 3 or referenced in module 2. I felt like I was going to throw up. I screenshotted everything, sent it to Jade, then to every woman I knew who might have crossed his path. The spreadsheet went viral in our university's private forums. Within a week, his coaching license was under review. His podcast vanished. His TikTok comment sections turned to war zones. One by one, women came forward. Same stories. Same language. Some had been clients. Others just dates. All of them had been studied, cataloged, and turned into anecdotes. He tried to spin it. Posted a video in soft lighting saying, "Healing sometimes comes from places we don't expect." I never claimed to be perfect. The internet didn't buy it. Neither did I. I never got an apology. But I didn't need one. I started dating again slowly. Carefully. I told people up front, "I'm not your project. Don't try to fix me." I wasn't planning to meet anyone that night. The hotel lobby was quiet, bathed in that fake warmth only high-end places managed to pull off. Golden lighting, oversized couches, the scent of eucalyptus and leather. I just wrapped a brutal 3-day conference on enterprise UX, and all I wanted was to disconnect my brain and maybe nurse a glass of overpriced whiskey in my room. But boredom, like loneliness, always finds a way in. I opened Tinder out of habit. I wanted just distraction. A little dopamine hit before bed. Swipe, swipe, swipe. Then her. Naomi. Red hair, arched brows, a smirk that said she knew all your secrets before you did. Her profile was short, just a quote. "I don't do small talk. Come correct. You're at the Grand Ledge, yeah?" My stomach flipped. "Yeah, just checked in. I'm 5 floors up. Room 409. Come have a drink. I've got the good stuff." She sent a selfie. Not a full face, just lips and collarbones, a wine glass in hand. The lighting was dim, sultry. I hesitated. It should have felt weird. But I'd had 2 drinks already, and she was beautiful, and something about the way she didn't bother pretending, just straight to the point, made me feel like I'd regret it if I said no. So I didn't. I grabbed my key card, slipped my phone in my pocket, and headed to the elevator. My heart pounded harder than it should have. I told myself it was the excitement, the thrill of doing something spontaneous. The kind of moment you laugh about later. The fourth floor was quiet. Carpeted halls, soft lighting, no sound but the low hum of air vents. Room 409 was at the far end, next to the ice machine. I stood in front of the door for a second, hand hovering over the handle, wondering if I was about to walk into a setup. Then it opened. Naomi stood in the doorway wearing a black silk robe, loosely tied, her hair up in a messy twist. She gave me a look that landed somewhere between amused and appraising. "You're taller than I thought," she said, stepping aside. I walked in. The room was dim, lit only by a lamp in the corner and the TV on mute, playing some old black and white movie. There was jazz playing from a Bluetooth speaker. The bed was made too neatly, and the minibar was open, 2 glasses already poured. She handed me one without asking what I liked. "Cabernet. Not the hotel trash," she said, clinking her glass against mine. "You looked bored in your photos." I laughed too quickly. I was. She sat on the edge of the bed, legs crossed, robe slipping slightly to reveal a lean shoulder and the curve of one breast. She didn't adjust it, just watched me over the rim of her glass. We talked for a bit, surface stuff. Where we were from. What brought us to the city. She said she worked in tech, but didn't elaborate. Said she liked fast decisions and hated indecision. Her gaze never left mine. She didn't blink much. After the second glass, she stood up and walked to the window. The robe parted slightly in back, revealing black lace underwear. Nothing too obvious, just enough to feel deliberate. "You ever do this before?" she asked, still facing the window. "What, come to a stranger's hotel room?" She turned, smiling. "No. Let someone else drive." I didn't answer, but I didn't back away either. She walked back toward me, set her glass down, and straddled my lap. The kiss was immediate, deep, hungry, no hesitation. Her hands moved fast, undoing buttons like she'd done it 1,000 times. Her mouth tasted like wine and something darker underneath, like cloves or cinnamon. Clothes came off in pieces. She pushed me down on the bed and climbed on top, her pace slow and deliberate, like she was in control of every breath in the room. And I let her have it. I didn't ask questions. I didn't care. Afterward, we lay there in silence, the kind that's supposed to be comfortable but wasn't. She sat up first, pulling the robe back over her shoulders, tying it tighter this time. "I need a quick shower," she said, heading into the bathroom. The door clicked shut. I lay there for a second, catching my breath, staring at the ceiling. Then I sat up and looked around the room. Something felt off. There were no bags, no shoes, no signs that anyone actually lived in the space. The closet was empty. I stood and walked toward the minibar, thinking maybe I'd pour another glass. That's when I saw it. A tiny red light, blinking from the smoke detector. I froze. It was subtle, barely visible unless you were looking for it. But it was blinking. And right next to it, a small black dot that didn't match the rest of the device. I went cold. I turned slowly, scanning the room. The alarm clock had a second lens. The lamp base looked wrong. My skin crawled. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera, switching to infrared. I'd read about this once, a trick to detect hidden cameras. I turned toward the mirror. There it was. A faint white glow in the top corner. A pinhole camera, hidden behind the glass. I stepped back. My heart was racing. I pulled on my pants and shirt with shaking hands. The bathroom door was still closed. The shower was running now. I opened the nightstand drawer. Inside, I found a remote I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't for the TV. It had no labels, just buttons. Next to it was a small folded piece of paper. I opened it. It just said, "Smile. You're part of the collection now." I dropped it. My hands were sweating. I looked at the door. It was closer than the bathroom now. I could run. I could grab my stuff and go. But I didn't know what was on those cameras, what was being recorded or streamed. I grabbed my phone, shoved it into my pocket, and moved toward the door. Then I heard the shower turn off. The door opened. Naomi stood there, hair wet, wrapped in a towel. She looked at me, saw my face, and tilted her head. "You okay?" she asked. I held up the note. Her expression didn't change. "Why are there cameras?" I said, my voice hoarse. She looked at them, then at me. "You're not the first person who's asked that." I backed toward the door. "What the F is this?" Naomi sighed. "You could have just left. Most people don't look. They drink, they F, they leave. Are you recording people? Are you selling this?" She didn't answer. "I swear to God, I'll call the cops." Naomi laughed. Not mockingly, just quietly. Like she heard that line too often to take it seriously. "You can call them," she said. "This isn't my room. I'm not even registered here. I use a guest key. Room's paid in cash. Under a fake name. You'll report it, they'll investigate, they'll find nothing. Just a guy who got laid in a hotel room and got paranoid." My throat was dry. "What do you get out of this?" She smiled again. "Control. Art. Data. Doesn't matter." I didn't wait for more. I flung the door open and ran. I didn't stop until I was in the elevator, clutching my phone, watching the floor numbers drop like a countdown. I half expected her to follow me. She didn't. When I got back to my room, I locked the door, shut the blinds, and sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went to the front desk. Asked if I could speak with the manager. I told them someone had used a room on the 4th floor under false pretenses. They looked confused. Room 409 wasn't even checked in, they said. It was blocked off for maintenance. I asked to see the security footage. They said I'd need to file a police report first. I did. The police officer listened politely, took notes, and told me they'd look into it. That was the end of it. I met him at a coffee shop, not on an app. Which, in hindsight, almost made it worse. I'd just finished a long run, sweaty, flushed, still wearing my compression leggings and a hoodie, when I ducked into the cafe on Main and 7th for a cold brew and a protein bar. He was standing near the fridge section, browsing sparkling waters like it was a life or death decision. Tall, athletic build, low-key handsome in a subtle, well-moisturized way. When I reached for the same bottle he did, we both laughed. He let me take it and said something about hydration karma. I smiled, thanked him, and walked to the counter. I didn't expect to see him again, but he was outside when I left, leaning against a matte black car with a logo I didn't recognize. He looked up from his phone and said, "Hey, sorry, this is going to sound bold, but would it be totally weird if I asked to buy you another one of those waters sometime?" I hesitated, but something about him seemed normal. Not pushy. Warm even. "Sure," I said. "Why not?" That's how I met Elias. We didn't jump into romance right away. Our first few hangouts were casual. He suggested quiet places, asked thoughtful questions, never made it feel like a date unless I wanted it to. He told me he worked in biotech, mostly consulting, and that he didn't love talking about his job because it was kind of niche. I respected that. I dated guys who talked about themselves like they were on a panel at South by Southwest. Elias was different. He liked to listen, and I liked being listened to. I told him about my work as a med student, my obsession with long-distance running, my weird little routines. He remembered everything. After I mentioned that I usually trained early in the morning, he started texting me good luck right before sunrise. He always asked how my body felt after long runs. Once, he even brought me a bag of post-workout snacks, just in case you forgot to eat. No one had ever paid that kind of attention to me before, not in a way that felt so precise. I should have noticed how precise it really was. About 3 weeks in, he invited me to a weekend retreat. I laughed, thinking he was joking. "No, seriously," he said. "It's not a yoga thing or anything weird. It's just a small group, a wellness concept, sort of. We do breath work, cold plunges, biofeedback. It's designed for people with high cognitive loads. You'd fit right in." I blinked. "What kind of group?" He smiled. "People who take care of themselves. All science-based, I promise. You'll get a full panel done. Blood work, nutrition, body mapping. You'd love it." Something about the way he said full panel gave me pause. But again, Elias had never made me uncomfortable. He was gentle, respectful. I trusted him. And I admit I was flattered. I'd always been obsessed with optimization, meal plans, sleep cycles, VO2 max. The idea of a weekend focused entirely on health and recovery? Honestly, it sounded amazing. He sent me the address, just outside the city. A private villa-turned retreat center, tucked into the woods, gated and serene. I Googled it. No website, but a few vague mentions on closed forums for med students and researchers. He picked me up that Friday. The drive was quiet, peaceful. Classical music played softly from the car's speakers. Elias told me more about the weekend. No phones, no social media, all for privacy. He said the guests were mostly academics, a few athletes, and people with profiles that make them easy targets for burnout. I nodded. I hadn't told him, but I'd been feeling exactly that way for weeks. When we pulled up to the house, my first thought was, this place is beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows, clean lines, minimalist landscaping. A woman in scrubs greeted us at the door. She smiled, handed me a clipboard, and said, "Just a few intake questions. Nothing invasive." The form asked for the usual: allergies, blood type, medical history. I filled it out, handed it back, and followed Elias into the main room. That's when I noticed something strange. There were only women. For others all around my age, scattered through the open space, lounging on sofas, sipping tea, reading. They looked relaxed. Too relaxed. One girl had a bandage on her arm, but didn't seem bothered. Another rubbed her temple like she had a headache. No one said much. "They're recovering," Elias whispered. "Most guests arrive exhausted." I nodded, swallowing the sudden tightness in my throat. Maybe it was just nerves. He led me to a room upstairs, simple, clean, sterile. There was a white robe on the bed and a laminated schedule on the nightstand. My name was printed at the top. "Welcome, Reese. Session 1, Baseline Diagnostics. 7:45 p.m. Room B." I tried to text my roommate, just to let her know I'd arrived safely. No signal. That night, I lay on a padded table while a woman in scrubs drew blood. "A little more than usual," she said, smiling. "We do advanced panels." I watched as she filled 4 vials. Then 5. Then 6. My head swam. "Can I ask what you're testing for?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, everything," she replied. "Metabolic markers, immune variants, hormonal rhythm, blood compatibility." I blinked. "Compatibility for what?" She didn't answer. Just clamped the gauze down on my arm and taped it tight. The next morning, I woke up with a dull ache behind my eyes. Elias brought me breakfast, green juice, a protein bar, and herbal supplements in a tiny glass bowl. "You're a rare type," he said, setting the tray on my lap. "What does that mean?" He smiled. "Blood. You're O negative, right?" I froze. "I didn't tell you that." "You put it on your intake," he said casually. And I remembered. Something in his tone made my skin crawl. I pushed the juice aside. He sat on the edge of the bed. "You're incredibly healthy. Do you know that? Your resting heart rate, your hemoglobin levels, your iron. Most people would kill for your numbers." I stared at him. "Why are you telling me this?" He didn't answer. Just reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from my face. "You're what we've been looking for," he said. I got out of bed. "Elias, I want to go home." He stood. "You will. After the final session." "What session?" He walked to the door and opened it. 2 men stood outside. They weren't smiling. They took me downstairs to a different room, darker, colder. A medical table in the center. Cabinets along the wall. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air like fog. Elias followed behind me. "I'm sorry it has to be like this," he said. "But you'll be okay. I promise. You'll wake up fine." "What are you doing?" I asked, voice rising. "What is this place?" He looked at me with something almost like pity. "You have something inside you that someone else needs. It's not personal. It's biology." I backed against the wall. "You're selling blood?" He shook his head. "Not just blood." My hands were shaking. "You can't do this," I whispered. "You can't just take. You signed the forms." "I didn't agree to this." "You didn't read them." I lunged for the door. The 2 men blocked it. One of them pulled out a syringe. I don't remember much after that. Just the cold sting of the injection. The way the ceiling blurred. A voice, Elias maybe, saying, "We'll monitor her closely. She's too valuable to lose." Then blackness. I woke up in a different room. My arm was bandaged. My abdomen ached. I couldn't sit up at first. My body felt hollow. My mouth was dry. My vision swam. A nurse came in and gave me water. She didn't speak. I passed out again. When I woke up the second time, I was in the back seat of a car. A woman I didn't recognize was driving. She said she was from a recovery service and that I'd been discharged early due to sensitivity. I asked her what that meant. She didn't answer. She dropped me off 2 blocks from my apartment. I stumbled up the stairs, collapsed into bed, and slept for almost 18 hours. When I finally had the strength to check my body, I found a small incision just below my ribcage. Clean. Sutured. Professionally done. I went to the ER the next day. They ran a few scans. The attending came back into the room, looking confused. "Did you know you're missing a kidney?" I filed a report. The police asked questions. I told them everything. They found nothing. 1 swipe turned into 10, then 20. Then there was him. Micah. His profile wasn't flashy, just a couple of photos, all neutral tones and clean lines. A soft smile, messy hair, and eyes that looked like they'd seen more than they let on. His bio read, "I like quiet places, long books, and people who mean what they say." It felt calm, like someone I could exhale around. I swiped right. We matched instantly. His first message wasn't clever, but it wasn't lazy either. "You look like someone who reads the last page of a book before the first." Am I wrong? It was weird, specific, and somehow exactly right. I replied, "Only if I think it'll break me. I like to be prepared." Same. Emotional spoilers help me breathe. That's how it began. Conversations that weren't about where we were from or what we did for work, but about how we thought, how we felt, what we feared. He wasn't the kind of guy who sent emojis or memes. He asked things like, "Do you think silence is a form of honesty?" Or, "What's your pattern when you feel unsafe?" I told myself it was refreshing, mature, something real after a string of half-hearted connections. Within a week, he felt familiar in a way that made me nervous. Our first date was a bookstore cafe downtown. He wore a gray sweater with the sleeves pushed to his elbows, and he smelled like cedar and rain. He didn't try to hug me right away, just smiled, held the door open, and asked if I wanted tea or coffee. We sat in the upstairs corner of the shop, away from the windows, tucked into a booth like we were hiding. The conversation flowed easily. He talked about the books he loved, the way city noise made him feel like he was dissolving, how he hated small talk because it wasn't built for people who feel too much. I told him about my job, middle school counselor, and the way it drained me some days. He listened like it was the most important story he'd ever heard. "People like you," he said, "are always the ones who get hurt the worst. Because you see everything, and you still stay." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just sipped my tea and looked down at our hands resting on the table, close but not touching. We started seeing each other once or twice a week. Then 3. Then somehow every day. He was always texting, always checking in. "Did you eat? How did that meeting go? You seemed quiet this morning. Want to talk about it?" At first, it felt like love. Then it started to feel like surveillance. It was subtle. He never said, "You can't go out." But when I told him I had plans, he'd say, "I thought we were spending tonight together." When I mentioned an old friend texting me, he'd go quiet for hours, then send something like, "I just didn't think you'd still need attention from other people." I started apologizing more, canceling plans, staying in. It didn't feel like fear. Not yet. Just guilt. One night, about a month in, I stayed late at work. A student had come to me crying, and I couldn't just leave. I texted Micah, let him know I'd be home around 9. At 9:07, I got a message. Guess I know where I rank. When I got home, he was sitting on my doorstep. I startled. "What are you doing here?" He shrugged, like it was nothing. "Just wanted to make sure you were safe. You didn't need to come all the way over." You didn't answer for over an hour. I was literally counseling someone through a panic attack. Micah stood, brushing off his jeans. "That's what you do, right? Fix everyone but yourself." I didn't know whether to be angry or worried. He stayed the night. We didn't talk about it again. Things escalated slowly. He started pointing out how my friends didn't really get me. How they only liked the version of me that was easy to digest. How I was the one always giving, never receiving. He said I deserved better. And somehow, I started to believe him. He encouraged me to take space from people. Said it was healthy. That boundaries were love. The way he said it, soft, slow, almost clinical, it didn't feel like control. It felt like care. Until I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen my best friend in person, or gone a full day without checking in with him. One afternoon, I came home and found a notebook on my kitchen counter. It wasn't mine. I opened it. Inside were pages and pages of notes, in Micah's handwriting. About me. Not poems or sweet observations. Logs. Tuesday, she was on edge after work. Likely because of that coworker. Watch for recurring stressors. Thursday, she texted her sister at 11:37 p.m., unusual. Saturday, seemed emotionally distant during dinner. Possible hormonal link. Pattern forming, retreat, over-explaining, apologizing. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The last page said, still hiding parts of herself. Still afraid of being loved fully. Still worth the effort. I didn't confront him. Not right away. Instead, I started watching him the way he had watched me. I noticed how he always knew where I was, even when I hadn't told him. How he'd repeat things I'd said in passing, things I didn't even remember saying. How he never talked about his own life in detail. Just vague references. A job in consulting. A past full of lessons. One night, I pretended to fall asleep on the couch. I felt him get up, heard the soft click of my phone unlocking. I waited. The next morning, my texts were in a different order. I changed my password. He asked why. I said I'd read an article about digital privacy. He smiled. Good girl. I started pulling back, going out more, turning off my phone, saying no. That's when the silence started. He stopped texting, stopped showing up. No accusations, no anger, just absence. At first, I was relieved. Then I was scared, because I realized he wasn't just keeping tabs on me. He was training me. And now, I didn't know how to move without wondering if he was watching. One night, I got a message from an unknown number. You're not the first, but maybe you'll be the last. Attached was a PDF. It was a spreadsheet. Names, dates, notes, emotional patterns, response times. My name was in the middle. Rebecca, type, caretaker, pattern, self-blame, compliance, collapse. I scrolled. There were dozens of other names, each with their own pattern, each with their own ending. At the bottom, one entry was marked. Active. Observation phase complete. Integration ongoing. It was dated the day we met. I moved, changed my number, deleted every app. Micah never reached out again. Not directly, but every few months, I'll get a new follow request. A comment on an old post. A message that just says, still worth the effort. I know it's him. I don't respond. I just block and document. Because even now, some nights, I catch myself thinking about how good it felt in the beginning. How seen I felt. How safe. And then I remember, it wasn't safety. It was surveillance. I met Jeremy at a board game night. Not a date. Not a setup. Just one of those bring a friend of a friend, things held in someone's apartment with low lighting, too many snacks, and the smell of candles that try to hide how old the couch really is. He was quiet. Not shy, exactly, just reserved. The kind of guy who waits for the second beat in a conversation before speaking. He wore a dark green flannel and black jeans, had a calm presence, and laughed quietly at the right moments. I noticed he never pulled out his phone once. He was playing a character in a storytelling game when I first really looked at him. He narrated with precision, his words sharp, deliberate, like someone who measured everything before saying it aloud. After the game broke up and people drifted into smaller conversations, I found myself next to him on the floor, sipping ginger ale out of a cracked ceramic mug. You're the only person I've met who doesn't hate being quiet, he said. I smiled. Noise kind of exhausts me. He nodded, as if I'd passed some test. We talked for an hour. Then two. About libraries as sacred spaces. About memory and how it fails us. About how some moments feel more real when you write them down than when you actually live them. Jeremy said he worked at an archival center, digitizing old journals, personal letters, photographs. His job, he said, was to preserve what people forgot they were saying. I didn't know what that meant, but I liked the way he said it. We exchanged numbers. He didn't text right away. 3 days later, I got a message at 8:02 a.m. You mentioned you liked late 70s synth. Thought of you when this came on. No other context. Just a Spotify link. I listened and smiled. That's how it started. Our first date was a walk through the University Arts Library. He asked if I wanted to see the private stacks, old collections not available to the public. He wasn't a student there, he said, but he had access through a side project. I didn't ask questions. I just followed. We passed through a narrow door behind the reference desk and into a room that smelled like dust and ink and forgotten stories. He showed me a collection of handwritten diaries from the 1940s. Pointed to the faded ink. See how the pressure changes here, he whispered. That's when she started lying. I laughed but stopped when I saw he was serious. He traced the margin with one finger. People always leave clues. He looked at me then. Even you. We started seeing each other regularly. Not every day, but often enough that I stopped wondering when I'd hear from him next. Jeremy didn't flood my phone with messages. He sent thoughtful things. An article he said reminded him of our last conversation. A black and white photo with no caption. A sentence from a book I'd never read. He remembered everything I told him. That I hated thunder. That I deleted old texts because they made me feel cluttered. That I always slept with socks on, even in summer. It should have been sweet. But sometimes it felt like he was keeping a ledger. The first time we slept together, he asked if I'd ever been recorded without my consent. I blinked. What kind of question is that? He shrugged, tracing his finger along my collarbone. It happens more than people think. Sometimes people don't even know until years later. Have you? I've recorded things, he said, but never without permission. He said it slowly, carefully. I nodded, but I didn't ask more. I didn't want to know. A few weeks in, I started noticing things. He always seemed to know when I was having a bad day, even if I hadn't told him. Once I mentioned a specific nightmare in passing, and the next morning he sent me a voice memo saying, "If you need to talk about the dream, I'm here." It sounded like it shook you. I never told him the details. Another time, I changed my shampoo. The very next day, he said, "Something smells different. Lavender and rosemary, right?" I hadn't seen him in person yet. One night, I was at his apartment, small, clean, minimal, but oddly empty. No photos, no clutter. He made tea and left me alone in the living room while he took a call. I wasn't snooping. I was just stretching, bored, when I noticed a cabinet door slightly ajar. Inside were rows of labeled folders, each with a name. I pulled one out. Marissa, 2019. I opened it. Inside were screenshots of text threads, printed and highlighted. Photos. A dried flower taped to a page. A printed Google map with a red line traced between two addresses. I froze. I checked 3 more folders. Nina, 2020. Julia, 2021. Cassie, 2022. Each one was meticulous. Cataloged. Dated. Then I saw it. Rena, 2023. My name. I didn't open it. I just stood there, folder shaking in my hands, until I heard his voice behind me. "You weren't supposed to see that." I turned slowly. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. "What is this?" I asked. He walked over, calm as ever, and gently took the folder from my hands. "My archive," he said. "My way of remembering. This is invasive. You kept maps. I kept moments. Things that mattered. Things people forget." I stared at him. "Without telling them? I never used anything to hurt anyone." He paused. "But people leave. They always leave. And then memory becomes fiction. I don't want that. Jeremy, this is not normal." He tilted his head. "Maybe not, but it's honest." I left that night. He didn't stop me. Didn't text. Didn't call. But 2 days later, I got a package. Inside was a hard drive. And a note. "I wanted to give you a choice. You can look. Or you can forget. Either way, you're part of the story now." I didn't plug it in. I hid it in the back of my closet, but I haven't thrown it out. I'd always been curious about control, not just in the bedroom, though that's where it started, but in the quiet way some people take the lead in a conversation, in how they hold your gaze, how they make decisions that feel like they were yours all along. I never felt like I had much of it growing up. My parents were strict, my relationships were full of compromise disguised as love, and I spent most of my 20s being the one who adapted, accommodated, avoided conflict. So when I joined a kink-friendly forum one night, on a whim, half-buzzed, and more lonely than I liked to admit, I wasn't looking for someone to dominate me. I was looking for someone who would see me clearly, without all the softness I'd learned to hide behind. His username was Cold Script. He messaged me after I posted a vague introduction. "You write like someone who knows exactly what she wants but doesn't think she deserves it." I stared at that message for a long time. When I replied, I kept it short. "And what do you think I deserve?" His answer was instant. To be taken seriously, and to be taken apart. I should have been wary, but I wasn't. I was intrigued. His real name was Adrian. At least, that's what he told me. He was in his early 30s, soft-spoken, articulate, with a calmness that made everything he said sound reasonable, even when it wasn't. He sent long messages, not just about fantasies, but about boundaries, expectations, emotional aftercare. He had a list of questions for me, things I'd never been asked before. What does it mean to you when someone holds you down? Have you ever used a safe word in real life? What scares you more, being hurt or being ignored? We talked for weeks before meeting. He never pushed. He asked for consent at every turn. It felt safe. When I agreed to meet him in person, he suggested a hotel. Neutral ground. Quiet. No pressure. I said yes. The room was clean, quiet, and smelled faintly of citrus. Adrian wore black jeans and a dark button-up. He greeted me with a soft smile and a hand on the small of my back. You look nervous, he said gently. I feel like I'm making a very calculated mistake, I joked. Then we'll go slow. He unpacked his bag, rope, a soft blindfold, a leather collar, a printed contract. No cameras. No surprises. Nothing we hadn't discussed. The contract was simple. Limits. Preferences. Safe word. Plum. I signed it. We talked for another hour before anything happened. He kept checking in. How are you feeling? Still okay? Want to stop? Then he kissed me. Then he tied my wrists. Then he pulled me apart in ways that made me feel more whole than I'd felt in years. Afterward, he untied me slowly, held me, rubbed circles into my back, told me I was brave. I believed him. That was the first time. After that, we fell into a rhythm, meeting once a week, always in the same hotel, always with consent and structure and clarity. He never raised his voice, never crossed a line. He made me feel like I was choosing everything, even when I was on my knees, blindfolded and shaking. Control is a gift, he said once. You decide who unwraps it. I memorized that line. I repeated it to myself like a mantra. It changed on the 6th session. He was quieter that day, more focused. Unpacked his bag without the usual commentary. No tea. No small talk. I asked if everything was okay. Just thinking, he said. I want to try something new. He showed me a soft leather gag. Only if you want to. I hesitated. I'll be right here the whole time, he said. Just tap my hand if you need me to stop. I nodded. He kissed me gently before putting it on. It wasn't until my hands were tied, my vision blurred, and my mouth full that I realized something was off. I tried to speak. The gag muffled it. I tapped his hand. Nothing. I tapped again. Harder. Still nothing. The pressure increased. My wrists strained. My chest tightened. I tapped frantically. Pushed with my shoulder. Let out a muffled cry. He paused briefly, then whispered, "You're okay. Just let go." But I wasn't. And I couldn't. When it was over, I curled into myself on the bed, shaking. He untied me slowly, placed a blanket over me, and whispered, "You did so well." I didn't say anything. He kissed my forehead and left. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I messaged him. "You didn't stop when I tapped." That was the signal. He replied hours later. "I thought you wanted to push through. You've grown so much." My fingers trembled over the screen. "That wasn't our agreement. You didn't say plum." I couldn't speak. "Then next time, we'll make adjustments." I didn't reply. The next week, he messaged again. "I've booked the room. Same time. Are you okay?" I didn't answer. He sent another message the next day. "You're not like the others. You're stronger." I blocked him. It's been 3 months. Sometimes I still find bruises I don't remember agreeing to. I deleted the forum account. But last week, I got an email from a new address. No message. Just an attachment. A video. Me. Tied. Gagged. Struggling. No sound. Just a timestamp. I didn't open it. I forwarded it to a lawyer. I've started documenting everything. The contract. The messages. The screenshots. Because this wasn't about kink. It was about power. And when someone ignores your safe word, they're not a partner. They're a threat. And I'm not staying silent anymore. I met Riley on a niche kink forum. It wasn't one of those shady corners of the internet. It was moderated, structured, and filled with people who took negotiation seriously. I'd been lurking for a while, reading threads about trust, boundaries, scene dynamics. I wasn't new to kink, but I was new to the idea of sharing it with someone who might actually understand the way my brain worked. Riley had commented on a post I made about exhibitionism and the line between fear and arousal. Her response was thoughtful, slightly teasing, and ended with, "Some of us like being watched, when we know who's behind the eyes." I replied. She messaged me privately. That's how it started. We chatted for 2 weeks before meeting. She lived in the city, worked at a local bookstore, and had a dry, self-deprecating sense of humor that made me laugh out loud more than once. She was open about her interests, bondage, discipline, a little role play, and asked about mine with curiosity, not judgment. The way she spoke about her own limits made me feel safe. Like she'd done the work to know herself. That mattered to me. Our first scene was in her apartment. She set the tone right away. Consent, safe words, a discussion of what was okay and what wasn't. I was nervous, but she grounded me. Her voice was steady, her movements careful. That night, I tied her wrists, blindfolded her with a silk scarf, and whispered stories into her ear as I moved my hands along her body. There was nothing rushed. The whole thing felt like a conversation without words. After, we lay in bed, tangled up in each other. She rested her head on my chest and said, "I've never felt that safe while being that exposed." I didn't say it aloud, but I felt the same. We started seeing each other regularly, always at her place. She said it made her feel more in control. I respected that. She wasn't clingy or overly emotional, but she was attentive. She'd send me voice notes describing a dream she had or a fantasy she wanted to try. She'd text me at odd hours with lines like, "I can still feel the marks on my hips. Good job." It made me feel needed, wanted. One night, after a particularly intense scene, she asked, "Do you ever record?" I paused. "You mean like for memory?" She nodded. "Or for arousal later." "I've never done it. I wouldn't without permission." She smiled. "Good answer." Then she kissed me. I should have known something was wrong when her energy shifted. She started canceling. Not often, but enough that I noticed. Her messages got shorter. She said she was just tired from work, that she was trying to limit screen time, that she needed space. I gave it to her. But something in my gut told me it wasn't just that. One night, I was scrolling through Twitter when I saw a retweet from an alt account I didn't recognize. It was a clip, low lighting, soft moaning, a woman tied to a chair blindfolded. The caption said, "When she thinks she's in control but doesn't know about the guest account." The audio was muted, but my stomach dropped because I recognized the scarf, the chair, her voice. It was Riley. I clicked the profile. It had hundreds of followers, all locked behind a paywall. Clips, still images, slow motion loops, and in every one, the woman's face was slightly obscured. But not enough. Not to me. It was her. But I hadn't recorded anything. I don't even own a camera. I messaged her immediately. "Riley, I need to talk to you. It's important." No response. I waited. 2 hours later, she replied, "I don't know what you're talking about." I sent the link. She left me on read. The next day, the account was gone. Deleted. But the damage was already done. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who was behind the camera? When was it recorded? How long had it been going on? I remembered her insistence on meeting at her place. Her control over the environment. The way she always adjusted the lights. The scarf she gave me to use. The chair she asked me to tie her to. Was it all staged? Was I just part of her content? A week passed. Then I got an email. The subject line was blank. Inside was a link to a Dropbox folder. Dozens of videos. Some of me. Some of other men I didn't recognize. All of them scenes. All of them filmed from the same angle. A mounted camera, probably hidden in the bookshelf. Every folder was labeled with a name. Mine included. Aiden_2023_ guest account. I couldn't look away. It felt like watching a version of myself I didn't remember agreeing to. I reported the folder. It was taken down, but I knew it wasn't gone. I filed a police report. They asked if I had consented to being recorded. I said no. They said it would be hard to prove. I asked if they could track the IP. They said maybe, but I could tell they didn't think anything would come of it. I changed my number, deleted my profiles, started sleeping with my laptop camera taped over. But the worst part wasn't the exposure. It was the betrayal. Because when you let someone tie you up, you're not just trusting them with your body. You're trusting them with your name, your silence, your vulnerability. And Riley took all of it, then sold the story to strangers. I don't know where she is now. Sometimes I wonder if she's still filming, still posting, still playing the role of the submissive while holding the remote in her back pocket. I keep the scarf she gave me folded in a drawer, not as a souvenir, as proof, in case anyone ever asks what it feels like to be seen by someone who was never really looking at you. You never walk into a cult knowing it's a cult. That's the thing they don't warn you about. There's no sign over the door. No slogan that says, "Welcome to Emotional Codependency 101. It starts slower, softer, like a long exhale after holding your breath for too long. And the worst part, you think you're the one who found it. I met Sage on a dating app, but it didn't feel like a swipe. It felt like gravity. Her profile was simple. One photo, no filters, a short bio. Astrologer, trauma-informed guide, still learning how to be soft. I don't even believe in astrology. Or I didn't back then. But something about her eyes in that photo, they looked like they already knew me. I messaged her first. Still learning how to be soft is the most honest thing I've ever read. She replied a minute later. That's because softness is survival. And survival is sacred. It sounds dramatic now, I know. But in the moment, it felt profound. We messaged for hours that night, talking about attachment wounds, ancestral trauma, shadow work. I didn't even know what some of those things meant, but Sage made it sound like she did. Like she had answers to questions I hadn't learned to ask yet. She was older than me by 6 years. Grounded. The kind of person who made silence feel like a conversation. She said things like, "Your energy's a little fractured today," and I'd find myself nodding, even if I didn't know what she meant. I thought I was falling in love. Looking back, I was being rewritten. Our first date wasn't a date. She called it a reading. She invited me to her place, a converted studio with floor pillows, hanging plants, and shelves full of books with titles like Womb Wisdom and The Body Keeps the Score. There was incense burning, a journal open on the floor, crystals in every corner. She asked for my birth time, birthplace, and sat me down cross-legged across from her. "You're a Virgo sun, Scorpio moon," she said. "That's why you keep trying to rationalize your feelings instead of letting them move through you." I laughed, it felt silly. But then she said, "You were emotionally neglected as a kid. That's why you seek intensity. You confuse love with presence." I stopped laughing after that, because she was right. After that night, I was hooked. She didn't just listen, she translated me. She made sense of my hesitations, my fears, my recurring need to be needed. She said things like, "You're not broken. You're just misaligned." And it felt like balm on a wound I'd been ignoring for years. We started spending more time together. She slowly introduced me to her circle, a group of spiritual seekers who met weekly for integration nights. At first I thought it was a support group, but it was more like church, if church had kombucha, unspoken hierarchies, and a lot of eye contact. Everyone adored her. They called her Sage, like it was a title, not a name. They hung on her words, repeated her phrases back like mantras. At first, I thought I was just being cynical, but then I noticed something else. They all started to sound the same. She told me I had stuck energy in my throat chakra. That's why I struggled to speak my truth. So she gave me exercises, breath work, journaling prompts, herbal tinctures. I did all of it. I didn't realize I was slowly replacing my own voice with hers. She stopped asking how I felt. She started telling me, "You're resisting. You're clinging to a narrative that no longer serves you. You're afraid of being seen. That's why you're pulling away." I wasn't pulling away. I was trying to breathe. One night, I told her I wanted space. She looked at me for a long time, then said, "That's your trauma talking." I froze. "No," I said. "That's me." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You don't know the difference yet." After that, things got blurry. She started saying things like, "You need to be mirrored by people who are on your level." And conveniently, those people were always in her circle. She discouraged me from talking to friends who weren't doing the work. She said my mom had karmic shadows, and that I should stop calling her until I felt energetically clean. She didn't forbid things. She reframed them. And I followed. Because when someone says they see your soul, it's hard to believe they might be using it. The final straw was a retreat. She invited me to a weekend gathering, 3 days of silence, journaling, and somatic unwinding. It was in the mountains. No cell service. No outside contact. The first night was fine. Long talks around the fire. Guided meditation. Everyone wore white. The second day, she asked me to share my origin wound in front of the group. I didn't want to. I said I wasn't ready. She said, "That's exactly why you need to." I hesitated. Then, in front of 15 strangers, I told the story I'd never said aloud before. About the night I realized my father was never coming back. About the way I learned to smile through abandonment. When I finished, no one clapped. No one hugged me. They just sat there watching. Sage nodded slowly. "Now we can begin." That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of the shared bunk room, my heart pounding. I felt exposed, not healed. The next morning, I left before breakfast. Walked half a mile to get a signal. Called a friend I hadn't spoken to in weeks. She picked up and said, "Is this about Sage? Because you're not the first." I sat on a rock and cried. Leaving wasn't easy. Sage messaged me for weeks. She didn't beg. She questioned, "Are you really choosing this version of yourself? I thought you wanted to evolve. You're running, but you'll come back when you're ready." I never replied. Eventually, the messages stopped, but I kept hearing her voice in mine. Whenever I doubted myself, whenever I felt alone, it took me months to reclaim my thoughts, to realize that being understood and being controlled can feel dangerously similar, especially when you've never had either. I still believe in healing. I still believe in softness. But now I know, anyone who tells you they're the only path to your freedom is probably building a prison and calling it home. I'm standing in the foyer of a rented estate house in the Berkshires, holding a drink I don't remember pouring, wondering again why I said yes to this. The invitation came through my friend Elise, who's always pulling me into social things I'd never initiate on my own. It's a wedding, but not a wedding, she said. More like a weekend-long dinner party with vows at the end. She said there'd be good food, no dress code, and the kind of people who ask about your astrology before your job. Against my better judgment, I said I'd come, on one condition. I'm not coming alone, I told her. Then bring a plus one, she said, grinning. You could use a little storybook energy. So I did. His name is Julian. We met 2 weeks ago at a gallery opening. He was quiet, observant, and spoke about color the way people talk about memory, slightly mournful but precise. We went for drinks after, then dinner, then my apartment. He was charming in a way that didn't try too hard. When I asked if he wanted to come to a wedding as my plus one, he said, I don't believe in fate, but I like following strange invitations. He packed a suit without asking what color I was wearing. Now we're here. Julian fits into the space like he's been here before. He knows which fork to use, which wine to choose. He laughs at the right moments. People are drawn to him. Within an hour, he's already spoken with the bride's parents, the officiant, and someone's cousin who works in film. I watch from a few steps away as he charms a small circle near the fireplace. He catches my eye across the room and gives me the most subtle nod, just enough to say, I see you. I haven't forgotten you. It feels like being chosen. That night, after dinner, we slip away from the main room and find our way to the library upstairs. The house is old, creaky, but elegant. The kind of place built to be photographed. Julian walks the perimeter of the room, fingers trailing along the books. This is the kind of place people come to be witnessed, he says. Isn't that what weddings are for? He smiles. Not just weddings. He turns to me. You know, you're different in this setting. How so? Less filtered. More ambient. I laugh. That's not a word people usually use for other people. He shrugs. It fits. He kisses me before I can reply. Soft. Then more. He pushes me gently back against the bookshelf. I let him. There's something almost ritualistic about the way he touches me, like this moment was always going to happen. Like it's not spontaneous, it's inevitable. After, I rest my head on his shoulder. He doesn't speak. Neither do I. The next day, I notice something odd. A woman at the brunch table is staring at Julian. Not in a flirty way. Not even in recognition. It's something else. She looks uneasy. I lean over to Elise. Who's that? Carmen. She used to date the groom. Why? She keeps looking at Julian. Elise glances toward her. Huh. Weird. I don't think they know each other. Julian, across the room, lifts his coffee cup toward me. Smiles. I smile back, but my stomach twists. Later, I find Carmen on the patio alone, smoking a cigarette like it's a secret. I walk over. Hey. Sorry, this is random, but do you know Julian? She looks at me, blinks once. Julian. My plus one. She exhales slowly. That's not his name. My pulse stutters. What? That's not his name, she repeats. He was at a retreat I went to. In Vermont. Last year. He said his name was Ethan. I blink. Are you sure? I don't forget faces, she says. And I definitely don't forget people who collect stories. I feel suddenly cold. What does that mean? He said he was writing a book, she says. He interviewed people. Got them to open up. Disappearances. Grief. Intimacy. I told him things I hadn't told anyone. What happened after? She drops the cigarette, crushes it under her heel. He ghosted. Then I found pieces of our conversations, word for word, published online. Not under my name. But they were mine. That night, I confront him. We're alone in the guest room upstairs. The window is cracked. The air feels heavier than it should. Why did you say your name was Julian? He doesn't react at first. Just removes his cufflinks slowly. I like how it sounds, he says. You've used other names. He looks at me. What did she tell you? Enough. He tilts his head. People always think they want truth. But they want mythology. They want to feel like the main character. I step back. You lied to me. I gave you something beautiful, he says. You'll remember this weekend for the rest of your life. There's no remorse in his voice. Just certainty. I don't sleep. The next morning, I leave before the vows. I don't say goodbye. I don't tell Elise. Julian, if that's even his name, doesn't try to stop me. He just watches me go, hands in his pockets, like a man who's already made peace with being a memory. A month later, I find a short story published online. Anonymous. It's about a woman at a wedding who brings a man she doesn't fully know. There's a scene in a library. A line about being witnessed. A phrase, more ambient than filtered. I stop reading halfway through. I don't need to see how it ends. I already lived it, and it wasn't fiction. Not to me. The first thing I remember is the light. Flickering, cold, too white for a hotel room. Then the weight of my own body, limbs heavy, mouth dry, a dull ache behind my eyes like I'd slept too long or not at all. I opened them slowly. The ceiling above me was unfamiliar, smooth and painted beige. A vent hummed steadily. I was in a bed, the sheets tucked tightly around me, one arm cast across my stomach like I'd placed it there carefully. I sat up. The room was clean. Hotel clean. Neutral art on the walls, blackout curtains drawn, a tray with 2 empty glasses on the desk. My clothes were folded neatly on the chair. My phone was on the nightstand, face down. I didn't remember getting here. I didn't remember last night. The last clear moment was checking into the Grand Ledge Hotel at 4:36 p.m. I'd flown in for a conference, HR tech, not exactly thrilling, but the company was footing the bill. I remembered the front desk clerk handing me a plastic room key. I remembered the elevator ride, the soft jazz in the lobby, the way my name sounded when the receptionist said it, like she wasn't quite sure how to say it, even though it was printed in bold on the reservation. After that, blank. I reached for my phone. It was charged, but the lock screen was off. That set off a small alarm in my chest. I always locked it. Always. I opened the photo app. There were pictures I didn't take. One of me, asleep on the bed. The angle was from above, slightly tilted, like from the corner of the room. Another of me standing near the window, mid-motion, turning my head. Blurred. My eyes half closed. The timestamps were between 12:13 a.m. and 3:05 a.m. I checked my messages. Nothing sent. I checked my call log. One outgoing call at 1:18 a.m. to a number I didn't recognize. No voicemail. No incoming response. My heart started to pound. I got dressed, tossed my things in my bag, and went down to the front desk. "Hi," I said, trying to sound casual. "Can you tell me if I checked out already? I think there's something wrong with my records." The woman at the desk smiled politely. "Room number? 812. She typed, scanned, frowned. "I'm sorry, but we don't show a reservation under that name. Not for this week." I blinked. "That's not possible. I checked in yesterday." She looked again. "There's no check-in under your name at all. Are you sure it was this location?" I opened my email. Showed her the confirmation. She looked confused. "That's our address. But this reservation number doesn't match our system." She printed something and handed it to me. "You might want to speak with the manager." I didn't wait for the manager. I just left. I walked 6 blocks to a nearby cafe, ordered a coffee I didn't want, and sat in the corner booth, slowly scrolling through my phone. That's when I saw the folder. It was buried in my notes app, a place I rarely used. Labeled simply, room. I opened it. Inside were more photos. 10, maybe 12. All of me. In the room. In the mirror. One in the shower. I hadn't taken a single one. There were also voice memos. I listened to the first. Static. Then, "She's going to wake up soon. She always does." My hands went cold. The second. "What's the line between sleep and obedience? Between forgetting and being made to forget?" I deleted them all. Then reopened the folder. They came back. Every time I erased them, they reappeared. I went home the next day. Back to my apartment. Back to the noise of the city. I told myself it was exhaustion. Stress. Maybe I'd had a drink I didn't remember. Maybe someone had slipped something into it. But the next night, I found a flash drive in my suitcase. No label. Just tucked between 2 folded shirts. I plugged it into my laptop. Inside was a single file. Plame.mov. I hovered over it. Didn't click. Closed the laptop. Put the flash drive in a drawer. The dream started after that. Always the same room. Always the same voice, just out of reach. A whisper behind the curtain. A shadow in the mirror. I started checking every hotel room I stayed in. Every vent. Every mirror. Every smoke detector. Nothing. But the feeling stayed. Like I'd been opened. Examined. Filed away. A month later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photo. Me, asleep in a hotel bed. Not from any trip I remembered. Written on the back in neat black ink. You always look the most honest when you're unaware. I moved that week. Changed my number. I don't travel alone anymore. I've told 2 people this story. One said I was paranoid. The other said I should go to the police. But what would I tell them? That I woke up in a room I don't remember booking? That someone recorded me and left no trace? That I still get emails from addresses I can't reply to, all saying the same thing? Do not disturb.